915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. You can visit desertvoice.media to learn more.
915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Good afternoon, beautiful citizens of the borderland. This is 915 Talk, and I am your host, Andy Frecka. We are live on this beautiful April 10th, year of our Lord, 2025. And today we have the man, the myth, the legend, Kenny on the board. How are you doing today, Kenny?
Where is he? I want a signature.
You know, one of my favorite things about whenever we have a radio station function and the public is here, it's always a standing room only. People show up at the station and they walk right by me because they're looking for Kenny on the board. Where is Kenny on the board?
Those poor delusional people.
So we've been learning a lot, Kenny on the board.
Cool.
Yeah,
I know. I've been watching here and there.
Yeah.
I can't say I watched every day. Sorry.
Okay. Well,
I've been watching and liking.
That's what we need. More views, more likes, subscribes. Which brings me to my next point. Mac Daddy Del Norte, you're running the cameras today.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Malachi the Italian Prophet is out of commission for the day. So we have the OGs, the original gang, running things. And
is he on the mountaintop? Is he communing with God? Malachi the Prophet?
He is not. He is not Kenny on the board. He is at an honor society function at his school.
Close.
Yes. So Mac Daddy Del Norte.
Yeah.
We normally have, you are a true son of the borderland.
Yep.
Yeah, and our guest today is not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that actually is one of the things that makes him special.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, usually we have people from El Paso talking about El Paso, talking about the borderland. Today is going to have nothing to do with the borderland.
Oh, nice.
This is like, first of all, he's special. Why, Kenny on the board? Why is he special?
He is a unique expression of a creatively endless God.
Endlessly
creative God. There you go.
Almost Kenny on the board. He is a unique expression.
I told you, say it better.
Yes, and get this, Mac Daddy Del Norte. Have you ever been incarcerated?
Oh, never.
Never.
No, they don't have fast food restaurants in jail.
Oh, wow, Kenny on the board. So what's interesting is we've talked a lot about prison ministry here on KELP, 915 Pray. We talked about prison ministry quite a lot. But what do you do when someone comes out of jail? How are you serving them so they get back into the community, so they don't get back into jail 3 months, 6 months, or a year later? What do you do, Kenny on the board?
That's a tough question.
It is a tough question.
Because I think it varies by each individual, although there might be a standard that people follow of what it is, I don't know.
Right. So our guest today is originally from Boston. He's been in prison ministry since 2001. He's the operations director of Hope Prison Ministry. He lives in beautiful South Africa. He's a missionary. And he's been in South Africa since 2006, 2008? 2008. So without further ado, wherever you are, maybe you're out in Fabens, maybe you're driving north and just out of El Paso, and you're driving past that jail up in New Mexico, the prison, or maybe you're driving out on I-10 towards Las Cruces. There's another prison off to your left. Wherever you are, let's give a very warm Borderland welcome to the one, the only, Mr. Andrew May. Andrew, welcome to 915 Talk.
It is a privilege, sir.
Yes, we have a lot to talk about. It's kind of fun because the other night I was at a social function, and you were there. We'll call it a social function, also a little bit athletic, and I heard you talking a little bit about prison rehab, and I intentionally did not listen into the conversation because I want to learn with the listener today. So you're originally from Boston. You've been in prison ministry since 2001, and you are focused on rehab. Is that right?
I'm focused on raising a generation of Christian leaders from the lost and fatherless generation of South Africa's prisoners.
Wow.
So the whole
Wow.
journey, the journey home, the journey
Okay.
home.
So you said fatherless. Is that many of the prisoners?
It is the vast majority of the prisoners don't have fathers or wish that they didn't know who their fathers were.
Oh wow. They wish they didn't know who their fathers were.
Father is not a positive word in my world. Unfortunately, it's a
Right.
place of tragedy. It's a place of loss. It's an open wound. So we
Right.
try to step into that father wound and build something new.
What city are you in South Africa?
I'm close to Cape Town.
Okay, Cape
But
Town.
we work in a network of 25 prisons across the country.
Uh-huh.
We're a small outfit. There's about 13 of us on staff. We've got about 120 volunteers.
Wow.
But God's doing crazy things, and we just try to hold on with both hands.
Right. So I know nothing about prisons in South Africa. I've been to prison, not as an inmate, but doing ministry in various. One was up in New Mexico, and then being a missionary in Russia back in the '90s, we would go to prisons quite often. Just maybe draw a picture for us what it's like to visit a South African prison.
Well, the tragic thing is, I could take you into a South African prison, and you'd be appalled by the buildings. You might have a cell that was supposed to hold 20 people, but if it was a pretrial cell, it could have up to 80 inmates in it.
Wow.
A lot of the buildings were built under apartheid, and they have not been updated since.
Mm-hmm.
But as you spoke to the inmates, to the men and women who are incarcerated, if you've done anything in prison here in the States, you would feel very comfortable. You'd feel like I'm just meeting you, but I know your cousin. He's locked up in Texas. Like, I know your cousin.
Yeah.
Like, he's in New Mexico.
Right.
Because there's something about those walls that overwhelms the other cultural markers, and you wind up looking and speaking like a prisoner.
When you visit, you start talking like a prisoner. Is that what you're saying?
No, as like for me, example, I'm not good with languages.
Okay.
But you can drop me in any prison in sub-Saharan Africa, and I'll make a connection there.
Okay.
I've had the privilege of working in prison in Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, mostly South Africa, and I've got no business there. There's this little white kid from Boston. But because I had worked in prisons in Boston, because I'd worked in prisons in America, I knew I'd met these men. I'd listened to their stories, and it's the same story. Like those walls, they imprint themselves upon you in some really chaotic ways. The way I think about it is as a meat grinder.
Okay.
Whatever it was before, like a young man coming out of Juarez or coming out of El Paso, a different universe from like a young Zulu man from KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. Different language, different culture, could not be more different.
Right.
And yet, you drop them in a prison, within 6 months, they're the same person. And you can speak, as you speak to them, you're like, I've had this conversation before. I've had this conversation 1,000 times before.
Right.
And so that's a tragedy because it shows like the crippling power of those walls. But it's also an opportunity because it allows me as a missionary to step into places where I have no business. But I can say, look, I've been listening to your brothers and sisters behind bars for the past 24 years.
Yeah.
And let's have a conversation.
So what's that conversation?
Well, it's about family. It's about the future. It's about hope. It's about guilt. It's about look, when we engage with men and women in prison, we don't bring judgment into that place. Like they're under judgment. They understand what that means with sharp clarity. But they don't believe in hope. They think that, no, I deserve it here in prison. I should be here.
Right.
There's no coming back from me.
Right.
So the shocking message is that there is a way home.
Wow. So what you are hearing most often is, "I deserve this."
If you strip away the kind of the bravado, the yeah, behind even kind of the gang exterior, eventually say, I should be here.
I should be here.
And
Okay.
like we're careful about who we partner with in terms of the local church, and I'm careful about bringing in local pastors who want a Bible bomb. Like, "Oh, if you don't change your ways, you're going to hell. You're gonna I just look, no, read the room. You're in a prison cell with
Read the
80
room.
people.
I love it.
There is not 80 beds in this prison cell, but there's 80 people. Like, this guy is as close to hell as you can be while still being alive.
Right.
And he believes it. All
Yeah.
these guys believe that hell is real. They
Wow.
just believe that that's all there is. They believe that that's what they were
There's
created
no
for.
other way.
There's no way out.
Yeah. Well,
So that's the message we have to bring.
I love it. Read the room. And one of the things when I used to teach in missionary training schools was, don't go to teach, go to learn.
Yeah.
You know, don't go to help, go to serve. You know, you just listen. You know, you look at Jesus. He was asking questions when he knew all of the answers. So I love that. And I feel like I have to tell you this story, Andrew, from my rather short prison ministry experience from the 90s before they kind of closed up in Russia for ministry. I had taken a elderly Ukrainian immigrant to the prisons. He was from the U.S., and we go into this prison, and I would normally be translating someone who came from English into Russian, but he spoke Russian, so he was speaking without a translator, unfortunately. And so he stood up and he said, "The reason I've never been to prison is because, unlike you all, I've never broken the law."
You people. Great conversation.
Yeah. And so it was. Fortunately, he was actually such a gentle man, and maybe a little bit naive, that the prisoners just smiled and went along with it. There was no hostility, but it's to your point, going into that very dark situation without judgment, because even the Son of Man did not come to judge or to condemn. Yeah. So love that you're doing that. Now, South Africa has many languages. English, Afrikaans, Swahili,
Xhosa, Zulu.
Yeah, the clicking
Swahili is farther north.
Okay.
But yeah, there's
Right.
11 official languages there.
Yeah, you clicked your tongue. Is that one of the languages?
It is. It has
Yeah.
3 different clicks. I can't do them well.
Right. Yeah. That's Namibian that they do the clicks, right?
Also up there.
Yeah, so there are these, for those who don't know, there's these African languages where they make clicking sounds with their tongue as part of speaking. I had a friend who had a Namibian roommate, and he would talk in his sleep with the clicks.
Thought he was speaking in tongues.
Yes, well, clicking with his tongue anyway. So how do you deal with that language barrier?
We are fortunate. There are 11 official languages in South Africa, but English is one of them. And English is kind of the neutral middle ground. So we love hosting short-term church teams or interns from America, and you can operate successfully with just English.
Oh, wow. Great. Yeah. What does a short-term team do when they come?
Well, when we host a church team or some other internship, we customize it to the DNA of that church. So some churches are excited about building projects. Some churches want to do evangelism. Some churches want to do counseling, and we need it all.
Right.
The tragedy of prison ministry is it touches everything.
Right.
So you start working with the prisoners. Pretty soon you're working with the guards. Pretty
Right.
soon you're working with the children of guards.
Right.
Because they all have PTSD as dad comes home from work and kind of drinks the day away.
Sure.
But then, so that can be frightening because you're a lot of real needs.
Sure.
But it means that whatever the interest is of that church, it will connect somewhere to a need that we have.
Right. This is like a very simple question that I don't know what the answer would be. What is your goal? Like when you meet with a prisoner, what are you what are you trying to do?
The thing that attracted me to Hope Prison Ministry is that they see a leadership vision in their work. I grew up with, I don't know, I call it in the shadow of African charities that were pity based. Like
Okay.
we'll show you a picture of a starving child with a distended belly, and like we're gonna make you feel bad, and then you'll donate, and like there are tragic needs in this world,
Sure.
but we when we go into prison, it's not out of pity. Like we see the leadership potential of these men and women,
Okay.
and I want to harness that for the gospel.
Okay.
Like the way I think about it is, imagine you leave your apartment in the morning, and you see a machine gun lying on the street.
Okay.
Like there's a weapon there,
Sure.
and you can decide how to respond. I can call somebody, I can call the police, I can pick up this AK-47 lying in the street. But the only thing you know is that if you go back in your house and come out a half an hour later, it won't be there. Somebody will have taken up this weapon. Somebody will have taken
Sure.
up this potential. And tragically, prison weaponizes people. You might go in kind of lost. You might go in addicted. You might go in for no reason that's your own fault.
Right.
But you will be weaponized, much in the same way child soldiers are weaponized. And you come out with a fuse attached.
Okay.
And the gangs have figured out that these are leaders. But the church is mostly kind of scared of them. So we've abdicated that leadership potential as the local church.
Okay.
And I want to take that back.
Okay. So tell me how that works.
Yeah. So there are communities. I'll just speak to my South African context, but
Right.
it's the same here in El Paso. Like nobody cares. Like I had the privilege of spending a little time in Juarez, and I love it there. I love seeing what God is doing there. Nobody cares what I have to say there. Random white dude from Boston, like, why are you here?
Yeah.
But that's the same in many of the communities I work in Africa, like disadvantaged communities that look very similar to Juarez. But if I can send one of my ex-prisoners back into that space, and he's got devil's horns tattooed on his face, he's got no mercy tattooed across his throat, and yet he's talking about Jesus. People pay attention to that.
Right.
So that's our goal. It's like I want to find the voices that will resonate in their local communities. These are the communities they were born in. These are the communities that they actively were trying to destroy.
Right.
Like when you come out of prison, and some of our students can't handle it. Because when you come out of prison, you are greeted with hostility and suspicion.
Sure.
And it should be like that. You have earned that hostility
Right.
by the blood that's on your hands. But some of them realize that, like the Apostle Paul, they're going to look at me out of fear. They're going to look at me out of skepticism. They're going to look at me out of suspicion. But they are looking.
Yeah.
And there's nobody in the community that has this kind of attention. There's no teacher who has that kind of audience. There's no pastor. There's no politician. But if you come out as a man who is known as a man of violence, and yet you're sober and home on a Friday night, you're
Yes.
walking your kids to school.
Yes.
Like you couldn't buy that attention with money. and I want that for the church. I want that for the gospel.
Yeah, I love it, and I'm reminded of some of the training I received in my life that the people you are discipling who are the most difficult are usually the leaders.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not just in the prison context, but just in general, the church sometimes struggles with difficult people. Well, I mean, we all do. That's pretty obvious, but it's very often those difficult people are the Peters, the Pauls, as you mentioned.
I was a high school teacher before I went into missions, and my students, they weren't good, they weren't bad, they were boring. They were excited about their cell phones and their designer jeans, and at the time, the average American teen was watching 3 hours of TV a day. I'm sure
Wow.
now, like the average screen time of a teenager must be at least double that.
Sure.
With YouTube and TikTok.
Right.
And my students in prison, for better or for worse, they're going to lead. When you get out of prison, you're not lying around on a couch somewhere watching TV. Like you're either going to be an incredible example that Jesus is alive and he's moving in our community, or you're creating chaos. But you're not lying around.
Right, for sure. I love it. If you just joined us, we're with Andrew May. He's a missionary in South Africa. He's involved in prison ministry, just sharing his heart in that. And I love it. Before we went on air, he did mention he loves the name Desert Voice Media. Love that.
Voice crying out in the desert.
Yes, prepare the way of the Lord. So this is your daily reminder that if you'd like to listen to this 915 Talk conversation or any of the previous ones, you can visit desertvoice.media. That is the webpage, desertvoice.media. We're going to go to a break, Kenny on the board, and we'll be back here in just a couple minutes with Andrew May. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
915 Talk is listener supported and is a production of Desert Voice Media. That's right. It's people just like you who make this program possible. Together with Desert Voice, you can learn how to better serve our neighbors and pray for our community. To become a Desert Voice Media partner, you can visit desertvoice.media. That's right. That's the website, desertvoice.media. Take a look and join us today in reaching our borderland for Christ.
Hey, this is Pastor Ricky Alcantara from Better News Radio right here in El Paso, Texas. And I want to extend a special invitation to you to join us on Easter Sunday. Our church, Cross of Grace, is going to be gathering in a special off-site service at McKelligan Canyon. We hope to fill up that amphitheater with people singing about and hearing about the good news of Jesus Christ. You can find more information on our special Easter service at crossofgrace.net.
Testify.
I used to be a hardcore Catholic. I actually wasn't giving all praise and honor to God or Jesus Christ. I was worshiping the Virgin Mary, and little by little I started seeing things that were just not right. And it was by listening to your radio station. I would like to tell you how I came upon this station. I used to work for a concrete company, and we were working on 24-hour shifts, and my truck was assigned to somebody at night. So when I came in the morning, they changed all my stations. And so I had my stations already programmed. So I was changing it, and I came upon KLP. And so I left it there because they called me into dispatch to go get my ticket. And when I came back, I just kept listening to it. And if I had never heard this radio station, who knows, I probably would have still been lost, still living in this darkness.
And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb.
And by the word of their testimony.
KELPradio.com. We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
We are back, and you are listening to 915 Talk. Normally, we're talking all things El Paso. Today, we have a missionary with us from South Africa. His name is Andrew May. But what we're talking about does apply to really any community around the world. So I do appreciate that we're talking about this. And also, I think it's important for us to remember about people doing ministry in other places. Andrew, you were talking about the potential of the prisoners, and either they're going to be a force for good or a force for chaos once they're released. Maybe tell us about a prisoner who kind of went through this whole process.
I think about one of my colleagues. His name's Alexander.
Okay.
But in prison, he went by No Jokes, and that was tattooed across his throat.
No jokes.
No jokes. The devil horns, the throat tattoo. He was. He first came on our program, our restorative justice program. That's one of the outreach things that we do. It has a focus on healing the relationships that are smashed by crime. but he came on the program to steal. He heard there was some snacks, some food, and he thought, I can pick something up for my friends back in the cell.
I will study restorative justice for snacks.
Exactly. I'll listen to the crazy Christians if I can steal some candy. But I've stopped trying to predict who will be successful, and he showed up with the wrong intentions, but God had other plans, and he's now a close friend of mine and coworker, and has been successfully outside for many years, married with amazing kids.
Right.
And he is proof of the potential that these men and women have once they're released.
Right.
Like when he first was back on the street, the police would just harass him endlessly. They could not believe that he was different. They could not believe that he'd given his heart to the Lord.
Right.
So they'd track him down, they'd pull him over, and he loved it because he'd whip out his old Bible and just start encouraging them from the Word. and now they run away from him. Like they see Alexander, they see him reaching for his Bible. No, get away from this. But there's another one of our volunteers. He's an ex-police officer.
Okay.
And he used to arrest Alexander. So there was once upon a time he was throwing him in the back of a police van, and now they stand side by side ministering the Word.
Wow.
And it's impossible. It's not something I can claim credit for. There's no curriculum that can achieve that kind of breakthrough. It's the Spirit of the living God.
Okay, so you have a restorative justice program. It's a program. We can talk about what that is, but you're going into a prison. You're in a room. You set up some snacks.
Yeah.
And a guy named calls himself No Joke shows up.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell he's not interested.
Yeah, real fast.
Yeah. And so what is your thought process in that moment?
We just say challenge accepted.
Okay.
Those are the men you want to reach. Like I've find me the gangbangers. Find me the guys who are hostile to the gospel. Like they need a radical encounter with the Holy Spirit, and then they will be the most sold out leaders. I think about one young man. You could tell he didn't want to be there. It was in his body language. He's slumped down. He's not participating. And I knew from some of my other contacts in the prison he was in the gang. And I was even thinking like this guy's taking up a spot. Maybe we need to replace him with somebody else. But he shows up. He shows up on day 3 or 4 of the program, and he just says, "Tell me about the white horse."
The white horse.
What's the deal with the white horse? and he said the night before he'd gone to bed, and he had this vision that as he's in his prison cell in his bed, this white horse comes into his cell, stands at the foot of his bed, looking at him and calling to him like, "You need to come." And he's like, I knew this horse was Jesus, and I knew I had to respond, and I had no idea what it meant. And so we could take him to Revelation, where some of those amazing verses about Jesus and this war horse come crashing into our world with truth and fire. And he's like, that's Jesus spoke to me, and I need to respond.
Wow.
And so he got up in front of that whole room full of prison gangsters. He said, I'm done. Regardless of what happens to me, you can. I don't.
I had a white horse come into my cell.
I
am
like
done.
Jesus showed up. Like I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah.
And I asked him just as a final question, like anything else you want to share? He's like, well, look, I have in my aunt's house, I've got a stash of buried money that we stole from this guy. We broke into his house. We had, I think it was about 80,000 rand they had stolen, and they just buried it in the ground. He's like, I need to give that up.
Wow.
And that's a fortune for these guys. That's a fortune.
Sure.
He'd gotten away with it.
Sure.
Nobody knew where that money was. Like he'd He'd done the time for it. It was his.
Right.
But he was like, no, I've met Jesus. I need to lay this down.
I love it. There's so much more to dig in with this. Oh, I thought that was Charlie One. Charlie One will be back in a minute. So he's there in his cell, and a white horse shows up.
Yeah.
He says it's Jesus.
Yeah.
And what I want to say is, of course, that's miraculous. Of course, it's supernatural. Of course, that's not something that can be explained.
I can't take credit for that.
Right.
But I was there.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say, is God does the impossible, but you did what was very difficult, yet possible. You moved to South Africa, and you walked into that prison. And I think that's a great encouragement for people out there in churches who are supporting missionaries around the world, is God is doing these amazing things, and he's doing it where his people are there responding to his call. So I love the fact that there's this supernatural part, and of course it's a supernatural thing that you and your family moved to South Africa. Of course that's no easy task, and I don't mean to minimize it at all by calling it possible, but it's what you did, and then this crazy story of a white horse. I love that. I love that. What is this restorative justice program?
The guiding principle is that crime isn't against the law, it's against a person. Crime destroys relationship. It's the same with sin. Sin isn't just against God's law. It's a poison that destroys our relationships. It splits apart our family. And the tragedy of the prison system, and this is true for prisons in the States, prisons in Mexico, prisons in South Africa, they are set up, it's kind of artificial. It's between the prisoner as an offender and the law. The victim doesn't have a voice. They get to share their testimony in court, and then they're put to one side.
Right.
And restorative justice says it doesn't matter whether you sit in prison for 2 years or 20 years. That hasn't done anything for the people you've hurt. They have questions. If you're a victim of crime, you have questions.
Right.
There's things you want to know that didn't come up in the courtroom because they weren't legal questions. The legal process is about why. What is about what happened, the details of what happened. But every victim has a why question. Like,
Right.
why was I targeted? And so we challenge. It's a very confrontational program. We challenge these men and women who are incarcerated that if they really want to be free, they need to give something back. They have information that they need to be willing to give to their victims. They need the courage and the humility to answer some hard questions.
Wow, we need to dive into this more deeply. But first, I have a question for Charlie One. Charlie One, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Andy.
Yeah. Do we have any cows on I-10 today? Any cattle?
No, lucky today on that. We do have some crashes to get to, and but as far as that, no animals. There have been some situations on the freeway and other roadways that have just been kind of very challenging. We've had goats on the roadway. One time we had a lion, a mountain lion on the roadway, just all kinds of things because we live in the desert and those animals come down, the lions and the mountain lions and everything. So we're just exposed to everything. We're in the desert and the mountains close to us, so that's okay. But I want to get to Far East Side. Now, Far East Side, this is a very busy intersection. Montana and Tierra Este, we have a crash going on here, Montana and Tierra Este. That's a shopping area. A lot of congested traffic here. Pebble Hills and Wonder Rock, we have a crash. Let's go out to Northeast. McCombs and Dalhart on a crash. PD not even there yet. They're going out there, McCombs and Dalhart. We're tapping the brakes I-10 East, Spaghetti Bowl area, but we're also tapping the brakes I-10 East at Geronimo, and the reason for that is because there's a closure at I-10 East at Airway. They close the right lane, so that backs it up to the Geronimo area. Just kind of sluggish traffic. You're not bumper to bumper, but sluggish there. I-10 East Geronimo through the Airway area. Also, we have I-10 West at Mesa, left lane taken away. There's back up there to Wrestler, I-10 East at Zaragoza, and also I-10 West at Litrovino. It has the traffic a little bit slowing right there on that east part of the freeway, so just caution in those areas. And Andy, back to you.
Yeah, a lot going on the roads today, Charlie One, and normally I ask you to tell our listeners about the Daily Menudo, but today I'm going to throw a curveball at you.
Okay.
Tell our listeners about the vegetarian options.
Well, I'm not. Okay, you threw me. That's right. You did good. I'm not sure of the vegetarian options because I never. I'm not a. When I go eat, I want chicken. I want tacos. I want flautas. They have tacos and gorditas and flautas and enchiladas. That's my ticket right there. But I never go for the vegetarian options. So, I wouldn't even know what. I got to be honest. I don't even know what the options are there in vegetarian. So.
Okay.
But they do have them.
Yeah, they do have the vegetarian options. I like that.
It exists.
Yes. And what cafe are we talking about?
Sorry?
What, is it the Mi Pueblito Cafe in Traywood?
Yeah, Mi Pueblito Cafe. They have those vegetarian options, but I'm more of the gorditas, tacos, enchiladas, and flautas versus menudo also. Although, gotta hold up. I gotta reserve myself on that menudo because just in my old age, I just can't handle. I love the menudo, but it doesn't love me, so I just gotta stay away from that. But I love it.
Yeah.
Mi Pueblito Cafe, 3120 Traywood, and Andy, back to you.
Thank you, Charlie One. We'll talk soon. And we're back with Andrew May. Before we went into our traffic report, we were talking about this idea that when a prisoner goes through the court system, it's what happened, it's guilty, not guilty, and that's it. You're either set free or you're put in a cell for years. But there's a lot more to unpack there. That's what you were saying.
Yeah.
And you said it's a confrontational process.
Well, every victim has a question, and sometimes it's
every victim.
Yeah, if you are the victim of a crime, you've got a question that you're sitting with, and sometimes it's an open wound, and it could be a light question, like a question of fact, like why was my house targeted for theft? Is it because I just didn't have security, I didn't have a good fence? Or is there actually a number of people out there who are targeting me for some reason? There was one woman we were working with. She wanted to know from the man who had burgled their house. She wanted to know, did you go through my underwear drawer as you were robbing the house?
That's what concerned her.
That's what she wanted to know. That's not a legal question. That's not a question that's going to show up in any courtroom.
Sure.
But this was intimate for her. This was personal for her. She wanted to know, did you go in my most private place as you were looking for things to steal? Yeah. And that's not a question that will ever come up in the courtroom, but as we walk a journey with these men and women, and as we challenge them to take responsibility for the mess that they've made, this guy could get up and he could give her the answer she was looking for. And so they can be small questions, but they can be hectic questions. They can be, sometimes a victim wants to know, what was the last words that my son or my brother or my father spoke before he died in that fight, before he died in that robbery.
Sure.
Again, that's not a legal question. The last words aren't a legal question, but that's so important to the victims on their healing journey. Sometimes they want to know. Sometimes there's been a murder and the body has never been recovered. There's nothing more intense than when one of our students takes responsibility for a body, for a murder that no one knows about.
Wow.
Like that's when you know a conversion is real. Like sometimes you think, oh, are people playing? Are people putting up their hands to Jesus just because they're bored or they're trying to look good? But if you take credit for a murder that you have gotten away with, that is
so you've
proof.
Seen that happen.
We have seen it multiple times.
Right.
This one young man came up to me once. He said, "Look, Andrew, he said it poetically. He said, I'm sick in my spirit. I feel like I need to vomit in my spirit." And I asked him why, and he said, "Look, I'm here for one crime, but there is a murder that I committed that I need to take responsibility for." And I stopped him. Like, I'm not your lawyer. I'm not your psychologist. Like, I'm not here to keep your secrets. Don't tell me about this hectic crime unless you are willing to bring it into the light.
Wow.
I said, no, I have to do this. Now that I've gone through the restorative justice process, I understand that victims need the truth. They deserve the truth. I realize that there are people out there who never knew exactly what happened because the body was never recovered.
Wow.
So he had to say, and he was willing to say before the prison officials what he had done. And we warned him, like, this could come with a considerable extra penalty. Like you could be signing yourself up for several new cases.
Sure.
But he says, I can't start a new life. And he had a daughter. He's like, I can't be the father that my daughter deserves if I have this literal skeleton in my closet.
Right.
So I'm humbled to receive those testimonies.
Wow. So this is reminding me of that old movie. Well, it's from the year 2000. Oh, brother, where art thou?
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say is it's an old, it has George Clooney in it, and it's these
Classic.
three prisoners. Yeah, it's from the 1920s or 30s. I don't know. And these three prisoners escape, and they're escaping. They're going through this whole journey, and they kind of chance upon a baptism, and it's in a river, and all these people are getting baptized, and they get in line and they get baptized. And as they're walking away, one of them says, well, all my sins are forgiven. I've been washed clean. And the other one says, I don't think that the State Board of Corrections will accept this. and is that what you're saying?
Well, look, we've seen both sides of that. And that's part of the confrontational journey of restorative justice. Sometimes men who experience religion for the first time in prison, they get really excited about some of those forgiveness verses.
Right.
And they want to tell me, no, the Bible says as far as the east is from the west, that's how far my sins are removed. That means I don't talk to me about this and this and this. I'm got away with it. And we need to refocus them a little bit. Like, yes, salvation is free, but it is the free gift that will cost you everything.
Wow.
And if you step into relationship with Jesus, baptism, it's an invitation to put something to death. Mm-hmm. I had the blessing of growing up in the church, and I had a bad theology of baptism. I thought about baptism the way kids think about a good bath. Like, I'm a little dirty, and Jesus needs to show up with some soap.
Yeah,
just kind of scrub me down.
That is a bad theology of baptism.
Exactly. We aren't dirty in need of cleaning. We are. What's wrong with us just needs to be put down. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with us needs to be covered with blood. It just needs to die. It can't be cleaned. It just needs to die. And when we see that imagery, it resonates with my students. There's a saying in the gang, and I'm sure this is true for many of the gangs here on the borderlands. Blood calls for blood. There's one young man who was in our Bible study. He had a skull tattooed on his forehead with a dagger stuck in it, and in giant block letters written across his forehead, it said, "Blood is my religion." And he was a sweetheart. You wouldn't, not in the past, but I could talk with him. No, this is true for me as well. Mm-hmm. If you're going to follow Jesus, blood, there's some things that need to be paid for.
Right.
And so we love doing baptisms in prison. There's some wild stories about that, and it means something different to do a baptism behind bars.
Sure. Wow. So this confrontational process, is it like you're doing like a teaching, and then these things start coming to the surface? Or
we bring together about 30 inmates at a time. We do it with men. We do it with women. Do it with juvenile inmates. We do it with adults. Get together in a big hall. We split them up into small groups. And then there's a series of presentations from the front. And then we discuss it in small groups, and it's an intensive process. We do that for about 6 days straight.
Wow.
We bring in a lot of voices from the outside. We'll bring in former victims of crime who are sharing their stories. so that these men understand the pain that they've created. We call up their families on speakerphone so that they can really listen to their families, sometimes for the first time, to understand the chaos of what they've created.
Wow.
And then on Saturday, we bring the families to the prison, and it's this wild ride where the families are given a chance to ask them very blunt questions about what they've done. Some of the families don't know how long the sentence is for. They don't know what they did. They don't know if they're guilty. So there's this time of truth-telling in front of a big group. There's usually about 120 people.
Wow.
And most of our students, because they've had an encounter with Jesus, they have the courage to stand up in front of this group and tell the truth. And that's the beginning of a healing journey.
Wow. So going back to, I guess, communicating with the victims, are you just like a middleman in that, or like how does that actually work, like nuts and bolts?
Well, as we're working with these inmates, we decide, all right, this one's ready. He's got the courage and the conviction that he's ready to humble himself before the people that he's harmed and tell them the truth. And then we'll track down the victims. Sometimes we'll get help from the local courts or the local police station, and we'll assess if that's something they want. We'll say, do you want to be face to face with the person who hurt you? Are there some questions that you've been holding on to for a long time? Or do you just want them to listen while you share your side of the story, while you kind of take back the power, take back your story? Behind crime, there's a powerlessness, especially behind violent crime. You're taking the voice of another person. You're inflicting powerlessness on them. And sometimes as part of their journey of healing, they want to confront the person who's hurt them and just speak their truth. And we can give them that opportunity. And it's amazing some of the healing that we experience. We have a number of people who were the victims of crime who are now part of our ministry teams, and they are now dedicated to raising these leaders from within prison. So they once rejoiced when these men and women were thrown into prison, and to be in prison in South Africa it's like you're getting dropped into a dungeon.
Sure.
These are not facilities that are designed for rehabilitation.
Right.
But now some of our strongest advocates were once the most hurt and angry people.
Right. So you through the local law enforcement, you get in touch with these victims' families, and you just reach out to them. Wow. What is it? They're usually probably pretty surprised to hear from anyone.
It's impossible. It's impossible, and that's. I've now been working in prison ministry since 2001. I was a kid when I started. I was a senior in high school, and what's kept me there is to see dead things come to life. That never gets old.
Sure. That's what's kept you there. Yeah. Wow. I do want to mention to our listeners right now, this has been so interesting. If you go to the KELP Christian Radio Facebook page, take a moment to do that today, or if you're at home or just at a computer, do that right now. Go to KELP Christian Radio page, and you'll see just a little post about Andrew May, and you can sign up for his newsletter list. That's like, it costs you nothing, but just you'll be hearing these stories. You'll be hearing about what's going on in South Africa. I don't know if a program like this exists in El Paso. It sounds like it would be amazing, but just learn. Sign up for that newsletter list, and he's a missionary. He's raising support. I did that for many years, so I'm going to unashamedly say, if this conversation has touched you in any way, send him some money. Send some money to Andrew May and his ministry. You could do a monthly through that link right there. You can do just a one-time, just to say thank you to him, just to send a not just a word of encouragement, but a coin of encouragement his way. So I highly recommend that. And I only met him for the first time this week, but he's a good friend of good friends. He's good people. He's someone that can be trusted. He's well worth our investment. I unashamedly appeal to you, our listeners.
Well, kind words, Andy. Kind words. And when somebody signs up, even to make a $5 donation, there's an advantage because in South Africa, it's about 19 South African rand to $1. So even a small donation here in the States can go a long way towards supporting our work at the bottom of Africa. Yeah. But it's more than that, because I've look, prison ministry is never very popular, and oftentimes if somebody's trying to push you away, they'll say, "Oh, I'll pray for you, brother." Now and I'll do it while I'm walking away. But when somebody signs up for even a very small donation, I can tell that there's a prayer behind that.
Sure.
And that's something I carry to our local team.
Right.
And look, for you here in El Paso, there is a way in which you are already part of our work. Whenever I go to a new country, I bring letters from the prisoners that I've worked with in the past, because that's my introduction. Paul would often introduce himself in new cities. So when I show up at a new prison, I say, you shouldn't care what I have to say, but I've been listening to your brothers and sisters behind bars for the past 24 years. And so if I share something that makes sense, it's coming from your brothers and sisters who are also incarcerated. And when I left America, I carried a number of letters with me, and some of them were in Spanish. Some of them were by Mexican prisoners who had found Jesus, and they wanted to encourage their fellow brothers who were incarcerated in South Africa. So I was in this one prison. It's a giant prison in South Africa, about 8,000 inmates. Wow. It's where Nelson Mandela was incarcerated at one point. And I showed up at this program, at this restorative justice program, with these letters, and I wanted to encourage the men there, but I don't speak Spanish. So I'm standing there with a sheaf of letters. I can read the English ones, but then I get to these Spanish ones written by Mexican prisoners.
Wow.
God arranged an interpreter.
Wow.
This is the God we serve. There was a law student visiting at the University of Cape Town from Spain.
Wow.
So only God was, I'm going to take the word from a Mexican prisoner in America. I'm going to take the translator from a Spanish law school in Europe. I'm going to bring them both to the bottom of Africa so that these men can be encouraged.
Yeah.
That's a level of faith that if I came up with that ministry plan, no one would support it. Oh, I've got a great new ministry. I'm going to bring letters from one continent. I'm going to bring somebody else from another continent to read them. No one would donate for that.
Yeah.
But that's God's economy.
Yeah. It's the extravagance.
So for you in the borderlands, some of your Mexican prisoners have already been a part of our African journey of healing.
Love it.
And I want to thank you for it.
Love it, love it. Again, we're with Andrew May talking about prison ministry. So many parts to it. We've been challenged by him. We've heard your heart, Andrew. We've heard the stories. We've heard the supernatural. But we have a few minutes left. And it's important while you're here in El Paso and while you're here on 915 Talk to have this experience. So without further ado, Kenny on the board, cue up the lightning round.
I like it.
Lightning round.
So Andrew May of Hope Prison Ministry, I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you to answer them quickly. We are faith-based Christian radio, so we do believe in right and wrong answers. However, because we are Christian, we try not to be judgy. We're not always successful, but we do our best.
Bring it.
Yeah, so the first question of the lightning round is, it's a question you're asked when you're out to eat in El Paso. The question is, red or green?
Red. It's got to be red.
Oh, red. It has been decided by a commission related to 915 Talk that answer is incorrect. Many of our listeners will agree with you, though. Have you had any great food experiences here in El Paso?
I've been spoiled.
Okay.
I talk about prison and I eat. You guys are very welcoming here, mostly at the homes of my friends. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Home cooking can't beat it.
Can't beat home cooking. Is there like a missionary, maybe historical, who is an inspiration to you?
Yeah, as an old school guy, he was a missionary. He was actually the first missionary from North America to Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Dude named Adoniram Judson.
Adoniram Judson.
Say that name 3 times fast. But he shows up in Papua New Guinea, and he's reaching out. He's with a crew. He's reaching out to a team to a people group that was pretty hostile to outsiders, and they grabbed him, and we act this out in prison. They grabbed him and his friend, and they hung him upside down. So they tied their feet to a pole, and hung them upside down, and so Adoniram's there and his friend is there, and this guy is like, look, I don't know, faith-filled missionary. He's like, God, take me home. I'm done. Just let me die. And Adoniram turns to him while upside down and says, the future is as bright as the promises of God.
Wow, Kitty on the board, hit it up. Say that again. The future.
We acted out in the middle of South African prisons. We'll bring in like a broomstick and we'll tie one of our volunteers. We'll hang him upside down and we just have him yell, "The future is as bright as the promises of God."
The future is as bright as the promises of God. That is such a great. Wow, great inspiration. We need to be reminded of that, and you're seeing that in some of the darkest places in the world. Again, we've been with Andrew May today. He's involved in prison ministry in South Africa. Go to the KELP Christian Radio page, find that, just that link there. Sign up for Andrew's mailing list. Let's get some encouragement and send some encouragement his way as well. And you know, this program is generally focused on local issues, but I also know that we need to be learning about what's going on around the world, and hopefully we can take some of these lessons and apply them locally. So love of this. Thank you for your time today, Andrew.
Proud to be on KELP.
Yeah, and as normally at the end we say, let's learn to love the city and love our neighbor. But let's say today, let's learn to love this whole world. Let's learn to love Africa. Let's learn to love the prisoners and give God all the glory. This has been 915 Talk. You have been listening to 915 Talk, a production of Desert Voice Media. In order to listen to previous editions of 915 Talk, just visit desertvoice.media. Let's learn together to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory.